Melly, I remember that you and Anne took great interest in your students, you know, beyond musicianship and scales, and it's not just a person parked behind an instrument. It's a person, a whole person. And I also remember that you actually even had foster kids who were cellists who lived with you. And I mean, you did mentor them, and I'm just curious if you and Anne ever discussed your personal level of commitment to your students, and do you have any stories of Anne helping people out like that?
Well, Anne was really very generous in terms of taking people in. She was very generous about that. I just was always very impressed with the way she taught, the way she conducted an orchestra, when her willingness to give kids a chance to conduct. You know, she didn't. Anne was very human and loved praises, but she didn't have to hog the show. And I always liked that about her. You know, very, very, very much.
Can you describe how she taught chamber music and why she felt that ensemble playing was imperative to somebody's musical upbringing?
Well, you know, if you have a kid who's fairly talented or very talented, who's at a certain level, no matter how good they are, they're not old enough to really give a concerto everything it needs. They can do it in chamber music and sound much better than they are by playing with people who are better than they are, who bring them up to their level. I coached a quartet in Deborah's summer music group that consisted of someone who graduated from Northwestern with marvelous player, someone, a 15-year-old who had just done the Sibelius concerto, a violinist who was so-so, who turned out to be a wonderful violist, but on the young side, and a cellist who had been studying for 2 years. And the final result was they were all at the same level. There was no way you could tell that it was someone who'd only been studying 2 years. Mm-hmm. You see, this you can achieve in chamber music. You can't in solo playing.
What about in an orchestra? Why chamber music versus orchestra? Why chamber
music? Well,
the
problem with an orchestra, unless you have an unusually good conductor, is you can become very sloppy. Mm. You know, in chamber music, if you're the only cello playing, you better be right on. In an orchestra, you're one of 12. You know, I remember playing in the New Haven Symphony. They were doing a Haydn symphony, and it was, you know, very easy. Well, I sat there during one rehearsal. I said, okay, Millie, I want you to follow every dynamic marking, every rhythmic thing that happens. Be terribly careful about the intonation in this very simple symphony. And at the end of that rehearsal, I was a pool of sweat. You know, it was so hard to do this.
Can you tell us any stories or anecdotes about the way she taught her students that
sticks
out for you?
She played violin with them. I can't play cello anymore. You know, so I played piano. And the value of that is that the kids don't know it, but you're shaping them musically too. They learn about phrases, they learn about things. They learn that you have to sound just as good when you reach up high. You made a comment of that once. You watched me teach a lesson to Diami. And you said, you know, you guys were doing such good work in the upper positions, you know. And one of the, and I also like I love group playing. And you know, in the cello, you really can have a whole orchestra because you have low and you can go up very, very high. You get more of an orchestral thing than you get in other instruments playing in groups. And it's also possible to have very beginners on easy parts. And
do you think that's where Anne had the idea for having group lessons in one instrument, violin classes and cello classes and piano
no, they
classes?
were originally, and still called bowing classes.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I know, if you have to, there's an exercise I do for bowing, and the thing is 2, 3, 4. You know, and it goes out, and then you have various bowings and various rhythms with it. There's not enough time in the lesson to go through that exercise, which is so important. You know, you'd have no time to do anything else. You do it in a group. I mean, this is what ballet dancers do. Mm. They do very little individual dancing on technique. They do it in a group, and you cover, you know, 6 or 8 people at once, and you can watch it, and that saves time in the lesson. Absolutely. Bowing class, very, very important.
Do you think she got that idea from watching your workshops or your cello?
No. I don't think Anne learned from me. I learned from Anne.
What did you learn from Anne?
What?
What again, what did you learn from Anne?
Her insistence, you know, her not letting go. She was extremely knowledgeable of the literature and the background of the literature. She had much more of a classical training than I had. I see to it that my kids get a classical training. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't want any kid to leave the school until they know all their scales. And Anne told me, as a matter of fact, that they sent out a questionnaire to alumni and said, what was the most important thing at the school? That where did you learn most? And 80% respond bowing class. You know, 100% response from the cellist. You know, I had a long talk with Bonnie. As a matter of fact, she agreed with me about the final concert. Mm-hmm. That it was fantastic. And I don't feel that everything you learn to play has to be performed. You know, I think you do some things educationally, and then you choose what works for a program. But just because you're not playing the Mozart quartet in the final concert should mean that you don't work on a Mozart quartet. I don't want the work in ensemble to be only performance oriented. And people always said, well, why did you stay on at the school? And I said, because I loved what Anne was doing. I felt what she was doing was so courageous. And I sure am glad. Mm-hmm. The school has been very, very good to me. Mm-hmm. You know, all along. For the lack of appreciation I had when I first came here, I'm certainly getting it now from everyone there, and that's a nice feeling. I guess if you live long enough, you know, you finally get recognition, something of the sort. I always like to see, as I've said a million times, the light bulb go on and they're understanding something. And one of my favorite stories about that was in high school. I had a music history class, and for a whole semester they were playing Bach, you know, and all of that. And academically, I appreciated everything was wonderful. And they played something, a motet or something that really got to me. And I stood up in the middle of the class and said, Bach was a genius. You know, I've been told that all along, and finally it struck me. And I have, you know, I tried to see it to it, that it strikes the kids, and not just me.
Did Anne feel the same way about Bach?
I think so. You know, we were talking once, and I said, look what these kids are accomplishing. It's a very difficult, complicated Bach. I said, after that, the theory of relativity is easy, you know? And she agreed, you know? It just is fantastic. You know, that's my belief in God. When you know, I work with daily miracles. And I'm sure that's what Anne felt, the miraculous, except that I think she expected it. She knew it could be, and I'm always surprised and happy. I'm more naive about it. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no doubt in my mind that she was a much more learned musician than I am. Mm. I learned from it.